Welcome to this sustainability training for the Sri Lanka Tourism Alliance. This is module 1 in a series of trainings available for all the SLTA members. My name is Brita Staal. I've had the absolute pleasure of working with sustainability as a leader for many years, and I've also worked actively in projects in Sri Lanka and India. So it is an honor for me to lead this session and take you through the first intro to sustainability for the tourism industry. We'll go through a range of topics, but primarily just get an intro to what sustainability is, what it is from a theoretical perspective, but also what it is through the SLTA sustainability principles. We'll look at benefits of sustainable tourism to SMEs and in Sri Lanka overall. And we'll also look into how you can manage these topics and activities and what you can do in your own business. We'll then go through some short case examples and leave some time for discussion and exchange in your team. So what is sustainability? Sustainability consists of fulfilling the needs of current generations without compromising the needs of future generations, while ensuring a balance between economic growth, environmental care, and social well-being. These are the three issues that we usually think about as planet, profit, and people. We have worked with sustainability for a long while. So now we have the definitions through the UN Sustainable Development Goals. It's 169 targets that seeks to realize human rights for all and achieve gender equality and empowerment for everyone. They are integrated and balance the three dimensions of sustainable development, being the economic, social, and environmental issues. These goals is not just something we made overnight. They have taken years to develop. It started with this definition that I mentioned earlier from the Brundtland report, Our Common Future, already in 1987. This solidified the role of multilateralism and interdependence of nations in search for sustainable development. Might some of you also remember the Millennium Declaration goals from 2000? These were primarily for developing nations, but now with our 2030 agenda, we have 17 goals that is relevant and have active indexes and targets for every nation. We have the Sustainable Development Goals going all the way up until 2030. That means that we'll achieve all these 17 goals before 2030. Right now, we have just 7 years. But that does not mean that we don't have to follow current research and follow what is right now the most important things to look into. Multiple reports have come the last years that have solidified that we don't really have as much time as we had hoped for. Especially the IPCC reports from the International Climate Panel and the Nature Panel, the IPBES reports, have really showed us that there are some things that we really need to look at first. So transition to a CO2 neutral society and the reduction of emissions, rapid reduction right now, the reduction of consumption and waste, and especially waste in nature, plastic in nature, protection of biological diversity and natural ecosystems. I think we all know how rapid our biological systems have declined, and there's a 70% decline in the biodiversity just since the beginning of the 1970s. Dealing with increasing urbanization and continued globalization, dealing with growing challenges of extremism and radicalization, and preparedness to current and future climate change. It's not just the emissions that has to drop so that we can limit climate change. We also have to prepare for a different climate and adapt to a new climate reality. And last, it's the change of agriculture towards more sustainable operations so that the soils and our forests and our production from the nature can continue in a sustainable manner. So I think that was a little bit of the why for many of you. But let's look into Sri Lanka and look at why this is important here. Sustainable Development Report from the Bertelsmann Stiftung and the UN Sustainable Solutions Network is a really good source to see how we're actually doing on these goals. For Sri Lanka, it rated 76 out of 163, and it has a country score of 70. You can find this report if you Google UN Sustainable Solutions Network SDG index. And when we look into the particular goals, you see that there's this green to red light system where we're really seeing the progress for each goal. And zero hunger does not necessarily mean that we are not able to feed our populations. It has a lot to do with the phosphor and nitrogen cycles. It has a lot to do with our sustainable soils. And for info, that red light on SDG 2 is also red for Norway. So this is not something that has to do with richer or poorer nations. It is really the targets within the goals that is important to know about. And we will dig more into what is actually happening on life below water and life on land, which is some of the big red flags here. But I think we should take time to link this to the overall development. And for me, the link is very clear when we look at the planetary boundaries. This is a theory by Stockholm Resilience Center. It has been very popular and is widely used by researchers and academics across the world. It has really just laid out the 9 planetary boundaries for us, where we see freshwater change, stratospheric ozone depletion, really our ozone layer, atmospheric aerosol loading, ocean acidification, these biochemical flows, which is phosphor and nitrogen, novel entities, land system change, and biosphere integrity, or what we usually relate to as biodiversity, before lastly, climate change. These 9 boundaries you see here, where 6 of them is already transgressed, really relates back to the red flags in this index. And it doesn't just do that for Sri Lanka, it does that for a lot of nations. And that is really showing us that these boundaries lay the foundation for how we have to work with many of the other goals. And that's why I like this theory where we put the Sustainable Development Goals into a filter with the planetary boundaries, and then the Sustainable Development Goals comes out like this. It's really showing us that there is a framework that many of the other goals stand on, and that is really the biosphere, with this life on land, life underwater, and that's just not just ocean, but it's also fresh water, and our access to fresh water, as well as how we really have rapid action to limit climate change. So I want you to take this with you when you work on with the Sustainable Development Goals in your practices. But now let's take this to tourism. So what is sustainable tourism? Well, the World Tourism Organization has a very nice and clear definition. Sustainable tourism is tourism that takes full account of its current and future emissions, social and environmental impacts, addressing the needs of visitors, the industry, the environment, and of course, the host communities. And according to the WTO, if we can make optimal use of environmental resources that constitute a key element in tourism development, maintaining essential ecological processes and helping to conserve natural heritage and biodiversity, we are doing the first. In terms of social sustainability, we have to respect the social, cultural, authenticity of host communities, conserve the built and living cultural heritage and traditional values, as well as contribute to the intercultural understanding and tolerance. And for the economical branch, it is really ensuring viable long-term economic operations, providing social economic benefits to all stakeholders that are fairly distributed, including stable employment and income earning opportunities and social services to host community that is really contributing to poverty alleviation. Now, the Sri Lanka Tourism Alliance has really worked on with these from the World Tourism Organization. So in order to break this further down and make it really easy to understand, the 10 SLTA principles for sustainable tourism is laid out in clear from the organization. So it is the 3 head topics that we know from before: people, planet, and profit. And SLTA call this environment and climate, social and cultural, and economical and ethical. And within these, we have 3 more brackets with deeper topics that I will go into now. Let's start with this first topic being environment and climate. Firstly, it's about taking climate action, to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impact through minimizing footprint and developing adaptation to a new climate reality. What does this mean? Well, it means limiting our emissions and our consumption, because our consumption usually drives emissions, but also looking at our situation. Are we in a situation of dry lands, of wetlands? Are we able to help plant mangrove that is a climate resilience buffer, both for floods, but also as it limits erosion? Is there other things in our area that we can do in order to be adapted to a warmer, colder, wetter climate? And that goes not just for Sri Lanka, but for, of course, all of the world. Next, it is preservation of diversity, which means that we have to protect and restore nature and biodiversity, conserve habitats and life on land and below water, and really promote sustainable tourism in nature. Why is this important? Well, first of all, we have to protect what we love in order to continue showing it to our visitors. If we are not able to conserve our nature so that it is still a visitor attractive nature, we will have troubles in the long run of our industry. Next, I think we need to also be able to show this nature and this value to our visitors in a way that doesn't degrade it. So promoting sustainable tourism in nature is actually a way of working that can be both showing our rainforests, our beaches, our mountains, while still protecting them or even regenerating them. I will show you some examples on this later. Next is recycling and zero waste, where I know that there's a lot of amazing companies and opportunities in Sri Lanka that is there to help you to ensure sustainable consumption and use of products in tourism that makes us able to limit waste to a minimum. Here, I also love the great examples that has come the last 10 years, where many hotels and guest houses use local artisans and crafts to rather promote refillable bottles and soap holders, etc., instead of using single-use plastic, which is really giving the guests a much greater experience as well. And maybe they'll even pop by the local artisan to buy something that they can bring home because they really liked it. Last, it's renewable energy. And this is important because it's usually a big investment and it's big choices, but it's also very important, not just for limiting your emissions, but also for building resilience and bringing quality to the guests that you have. By having your own sources of renewable energy, you can be in a safer situation when there's cutoffs or changes in the main electricity in your area. So by improving energy efficiency and access to clean renewable energy for your sector, you will both help yourself, but also, of course, help the world. And here it might be a tips to all actors in the tourism industry to collaborate for rapid scaling of renewables. We'll finish with environment and climate there and move on to social and culture. This really goes for fostering inclusivity and diversity, community development, and preservation and celebration of culture. So firstly, we have to ensure a safe, respectful, and enriching experience for all, both visitors and co-workers, regardless of gender, race, disability, and other factors. This is, of course, not just giving you a great working environment, it's also enabling a standing in your community that will be respected. Next, on community development, it is about preserving and strengthening the quality of life in the local community, including social structures, access to resources, facilities, and public goods for all, as well as avoid any form of social degradation and exploitation. Again, this is something that will only give you good vibes from your community and a much more respected role in the way of working into the future. Last, it is preservation and celebration of culture. And of course, this is what many people come to visit Sri Lanka for. They're very interested in seeing what is the culture here, how can we preserve it, how can we see the real and traditional and both modern and old-fashioned ways of celebrating the Sri Lankan culture. So by respecting and further developing and highlighting the local communities, both historical but also modern cultural heritage, authentic culture, traditions and distinctiveness, we are bringing a much more truthful cultural experience to our visitors. And that was the people bit. So lastly, let's look at the economical and ethical bits from the Sri Lanka Tourism Alliance principles. First of all, we encourage industry collaboration. And what does this mean? Well, we know that by ensuring the viability and competitiveness of tourism destination in a long-term perspective through collaboration of local value creation, we ensure the resilience of the whole industry. By making each other better in one destination, the whole destination grows and the whole destination becomes better. So this is not a competition, it's about making each other better. Secondly, supply chain solutions. We have to ensure competitive tourism across the supply chains and protect the viability and competitiveness of tourism in a long-term perspective. Here, it is really about having value chains that we can trust, that has some kind of foreseeable price structures and really a sustainable delivery chain. This is many times about relations, but it can also be about good agreements and good contracts, and also again about industry collaboration so that we have economies of scale with our suppliers. So here, these 2 points will also work together. And last, it's about monitoring and evaluation. Monitor and evaluate all progress in order to know that we have this continuous development. Without really daring to set some goals and start tracking our way towards them, there's no way of saying that we are becoming more sustainable in any way. So monitoring and evaluation goes for all points. And in summary, You have the three big bulks of the SLTA sustainability principles that the industry really should promote in every way, because it is something that will only make us stronger together. So people, planet, profit through environment and climate, social and cultural, economical and ethical. Before we leave this little theoretical bulk behind, I have to also say that we've talked about this triple bottom line. It's a concept from John Elkington. He was actually coining this term already in 1995. That is really what has led to the people, planet and profit way of looking at sustainability. But his intent was to challenge business leaders to rethink capitalism from a purely money focus to a more holistic view that included the people and the planet. But here you see a headline from where he actually went out in the Harvard Business Review and tried to recall his theory 25 years later, because he saw that the way that the triple bottom line and the people, planet, profit had been used was not the way he had intended. He saw that the slow pace at which business leaders and the business world was evolving to become sustainable was really not the way he had foreseen with the triple bottom line. So he has urged us to rather start talking about regeneration. Elkington does acknowledge that the triple bottom line has made capitalism more responsible and less destructive, but he really wants it to become radically more economically inclusive, socially just, and environmentally restorative. And the only way to achieve this is for the business world to shift its focus from sustainability to regeneration. While sustainability is about incremental improvements on existing business practices, making them less damaging for the environment and a little bit better for the people, regeneration really requires organizations to go back to basics and re-engineer their entity so that they can not only undo the damage, but also regenerate and make things better. We'll have some very clear examples on how this can work in the cases at the end of the day today, but there's also a separate session in the SLTA training modules that looks at regeneration. Okay, we'll move on to how we actually do this in our businesses. And there's been multiple frameworks and initiatives and certifications that can help you with this. I think what is important for you to know is that this really depends on your size. Maybe you're part of a chain where the certification is already decided, or maybe you're a smaller SMB or entity that has to work this out on your own. And many of these certifications are not always very easy or affordable to start with. It's long processes, but there are also some that does not cost that much, or some that is even open source that you can visit on your own. So I've here laid out the global certifications so you know them. Of course, the ISO system has many certifications, both for the operational setting and for your entity, but also for events and managements. B Corp is also a newer certification that has come that is really working with the science-based targets and setting a standard that is a little bit over and beyond what we've seen that the ISO standard has been doing till now. And then we have in the tourism industry, the Green Key, the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, and the Travel Life certifications that has been quite popular. In Asia, it's also the Green Globe, the model for sustainable tourism in Central Asia, and also, of course, the Green Key and the ISO 14001. ISO certifications also have to entail the 9001 to get the 14001. So usually I have to go into the whole ISO system in depth, which is probably more relevant for the bigger actors in the industry. And then we have some measuring and reporting frameworks. Of course, many people have tried to just report directly on the SDGs, sometimes through the UN Global Compact that is available for small and medium businesses, but also large scale business. And some has reported with the GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative, or even CDP for climate emissions. Here, it's really about finding out what your size and operations allows you to do, what you have time to do, and what is relevant for your size. There is also several open source frameworks. I really recommend one framework that is called Future Fit. If you just Google Future Fit Business Framework, you'll have open source assets that you can work on for your business. But this is really look into what your stakeholders are expecting, what is most relevant for your business and your and with your clients and customers, and then see what is suitable to your size. We'll go a little bit into what the GSTC standard is looking at. And this is a Global Sustainable Tourism Council certification that is really having criteria that works for both hotels and accommodation, for tour operators, for destinations and local governments, and also for corporate business travel and for travelers themselves that lay out some criteria. So the GSTC criteria serve as the global standards for sustainability in travel and tourism. The criteria are used for education and awareness raising, policy making for businesses and government agencies, and other organization types, measurement and evaluation as a basis for certification processes. Being certified by an accredited certification body means that your tourism product or service complies with the highest social and environmental standards of the market. We have to acknowledge that many of our clients and visitors will really look for certifications because it is a public concern that the tourism industry has harmful effects and impacts. And for them, a certification is a stamp of approval. So many owners and buyers of hotels and guest houses use the GSTC framework and highlight those accommodations certified by the GSTC accredited business units. So, for example, Hilton, the TUI Group, EasyJet, Amex, Booking.com is currently actively using GSTC. Next, I wanted to show you some of the topics that are most commonly reported on for the tourism industry. So, of course, across the sector, it's the energy use and conservation, which is also general in other industries. It's a lot of focus on this. It's the amount of materials used, consumption. And it's really also usually community assessment, skills development, how much you work with your resources to develop skills and really build your responsibility in the community. For bigger actors in the cruise industry, it's also more public policy positions, anti-corruption, more governance issues, and also, of course, habitat protection and restoration. And for airlines, it's primarily how we work with labor, benefits, diversity, and of course also what we do in collective bargaining and giving our resources good contracts. What we also see that is emerging is that the biodiversity protection of water bodies, habitats, is really becoming a normal thing for many to report on. Usually there also is more openness on wage ratios and what normal minimum wage in an area is. And sometimes we also see that we have clarity and transparency on where water is withdrawn, how we can recycle it, and of course also data privacy rates, which we have seen, especially for everyone that has to comply to GDPR. Even if you're a small or medium enterprise and you're not doing any reporting, it's important to understand that both industry leaders and medium-sized actors might start to look for this, and that this really reflects onto the visitors. So consumers will increasingly expect to not necessarily find a sustainability report, but they want to find something about your sustainability measures on your websites or even in your hotel or in your transport vehicle or activities. Even as a small and medium enterprise, it's crucial to understand that both industry leaders and medium-sized actors are doing this. They're increasingly reporting on their environmental governance and social performance. And this will reflect onto the consumers that are increasingly expecting to find some data around your ESG performance on your websites or in your hotel or in the vehicle that you pick them up with. And even though they might not respect a full sustainability report, it's probably expected that they will look for something around what you're doing to take care of the environment around you, your workers and your community, as well as the governance and economical aspects. Before we finish up this theoretical session, we will just shortly go through what you can do in your business. So when we start looking at a sustainability strategy for our business, we should be really clear on what should be our priority. And this should be based on what is your material impact? Where is it that you have the biggest positive or negative impacts on your surroundings? What is your biggest impact opportunity? What can you do locally or regionally? And what do you have to do together with partners, while also considering what you can do all by yourselves? In this strategy, you should also look at what you can do right now and what you have to look into for the longer term. It's really good to use the sustainability goals, as we have discussed previously in this session, and really use those to define what sustainable tourism management is for you. This should be based on what your core business is. Is it primarily activities or transportation, or is it primarily housing people, giving them rooms to sleep in and food on the table? And when considering this, you just look at your strengths. What are you good at? What are your challenges? Who do you depend on to run your business? And really do some thinking around what you can do alone and what you can do together in either as a member in the Sri Lanka Tourism Alliance or in your regional or local context. And based on that, you can really start to sketch out what should be your strategy. I really also recommend to look into your local networks. Of course, SLTA is an important actor, but maybe you also have some UN Global Compact members around you that you either can cooperate with or that you can all learn from. UN Global Compact has a fantastic web platform where you can really learn about how to target gender equality, how to work with business and human rights, how to really accelerate your climate work. And they also have a program to kind of follow this. Please check out the accelerators under the UN Global Compact site. So as a final ending on this session, we will look into some case examples. I have worked with several tourism industry actors, and I've done some very interesting strategies as well as following these up and reporting on them. So I wanted to share some of these with you. First of all, I have a case example from the Sustainable Travel International site. They are, of course, working with many global issues, but they have decided to address and really be clear on 4 of their core issues, which is safeguarding nature, combating climate change, empower communities, and tackle waste pollution. By being so clear on this, they really are able to leverage the work that they have in the industry, but they're also inviting all their members and their businesses to really take tourism's most pressing and transformative impact and work towards a future where travel is beneficial for people and places around the world. So this is one place where you can look for some inspiration. The other one I wanted to highlight was really the promise that one of the Norwegian actors I've worked with had to their guests. They didn't really just want to sell a service or a stay at their hotels and their places. They really wanted to invite their guests into a transformative travel. And they're saying that as our guests, you are not only a true traveler, you also have true impact. So when they say that, they have to also, of course, be able to measure that impact. They are a travel agent, so they work directly with hotels and activity providers around in Norway. But together with their partners, they've really been able to develop this strategy where they say that they want to have a transformative travel where their guests are supposed to be developed, so they learn new skills and see new situations and learn new cultures. But they also want this development to be something that is beneficial for the local actors and the places that are visited. Secondly, they are having what they're calling a participatory or co-creating travel, where you're in nature, but also in a natural way. So they enable their guests to have impact and be a part of something bigger by doing something beneficial to nature that is co-creating in the sense that you take part in a beach cleanup, you take part in a tree planting, you're maybe conserving nature together with local organizations, but you're really doing something profoundly impactful while visiting this place. Lastly, they want to have low impact but max output. This means that they're actually targeting themselves to a more luxurious segment. And they're saying that in order to lower their emissions, and as you know, we calculate travel emissions by per guest emission per mile. So in order to do that, they of course say that you have to put this out on the days, and the emissions per mile per day is of course lower if you can extend the stay. So by doing this, they're actually making a promise to themselves that they want to not allow weekend travels. They only allow minimum 5 nights of stay. And this means less transport, more experience, and also less stress for their partners. So in summary, they want to have participatory and co-creating travel. They want to do it naturally in nature. They want to have low impact and max output on their travels, and really doing this by having some clear restrictions on what kind of travels they will say, and saying no thank you to the weekend travelers that do not have the opportunity to stay for longer, which is really lessening the stress for everyone involved. And last, they want to have this transformative travel where the development is not just for the guest, it's also for the stay. And they have some brilliant stories around how they do this. So you should check out their website, upnorway.com. I think this is something that we can all do. The carbon footprint from the global tourism industry is primarily from transport. So you can set some requirements to yourselves, to your guests, and really say, okay, my primary climate impact is the way people get to my resort or to my activities. How can I work with lowering this impact? And by doing that, you can either set requirements for yourselves and your guests, but you can also work together in partnership with the actors around you to try to limit this huge impact. That will also, of course, target SDG 13, which is how we deal with having clear climate actions. If you do this, you can, of course, find new business opportunities by finding better modes of transport for your guests, cooperating with your with the actors around you to find more sustainable travel options. Maybe there's electrical tuk-tuks, electrical buses, cars that you can partner up with to have the transport from the airport to your hotel, etc. But solutions will not appear unless we all try to target our audiences and make these solutions clear. Last, on the SDG 13, I wanted to give an example of a festival in Norway that has really been able to limit their emissions, first of all, by taking down their footprint, but second of all, by also trying to really inform and educate their guests on what sustainable behavior is. By doing that, they've been able to survey all their participants and also measure that the willingness of the guests to pollute and to do air travels, for example, has been reduced by just experiencing this green festival environment. If we look into SDG 12, some of the things that you can really do is directly connected to the targets of this SDG, and really finding ways to develop and implement tools to monitor sustainable development impacts is really what you can do across your entire scope, like in creating job, promoting local culture, and promoting local products. There's some fantastic business opportunities for local producers and artisans, and you should check out the sustainability guide for SMBs that is listed on the SLTA website, but also on the Sri Lanka Environment Fund, that really has some products that you can use at your facility that is made sustainably in Sri Lanka. Last, if we look at the target for SDG 15, protecting life on land, we really see that you can do a lot to influence the global tourism on protecting and rebuilding the rainforest in Sri Lanka. This is crucial that we have international support for this incredibly important stretch of land that Sri Lanka is known for and has a huge heritage in protecting. So by encouraging your guests to visit the conservation lands and use natural trails for hiking and birdwatching in a sustainable and conscious way, and also, of course, support local organizations that protect and restore primary forest and the riverine forest adjoining the Sinharaja rainforest. This is really the only way that we can positively impact the reforestation and the restoring of our degraded rainforests. I've worked with a lot of fantastic actors in Sri Lanka, and one of my favorite stories is from one of the hotel chains that really made a strategy and they painted it on their wall. I don't have a picture of the painting, but I've tried to recreate it here in the way that they really made the steps and then they put in the sentences and the goals that they have for each year going forward. So Maybe you should also imagine your own writings on the wall. Put 2023, 2024, and 2025 as some goalposts going forward, and try to see if you can make some sustainability goals that you can use to get forward. As an end to this session, I also had some discussion and exchange tasks for you. So I really want you to find some industry partners or maybe colleagues in your own entity and discuss how you can go from using the theory that you've learned today and build it into praxis for your hotel. Secondly, I really want you to check out the sustainability development goals and see what you can contribute to. There's some links attached to this video that you can go in and really learn more and look into what your individual goals, your industry goals, and maybe your national goals could be. Last, you should really discuss with your peers in the industry or your colleagues where your area of power is. What issues can you really do something on? Where do you need to cooperate? And what can you do alone right away? Using the plan, do, check, act model really can help you do this fast and move forward on your sustainability agenda. So have a look at what you can do now, what you have to save for later, what you can do through the industry, and what you can do more as a political lobby towards the national regulation. And last, maybe you should consider if a certification is helpful for you. Try to understand what certification systems are sought for in your part of the industry. Maybe also ask your customers what kind of verifications or certifications are they looking for. And last, don't forget that the Sri Lanka Tourism Alliance is here to support you. And there's multiple things you can do together with your competitors or your peers in the industry to make Sri Lankan tourism even better. Good luck on your sustainability agenda, and I hope to talk to you again soon.